I'm going to tell you the story of a group of people who went into the woods with the wrong man. 24-year-old Georgia-based woman named Meredith Emerson. She has a black Labrador retriever named Ella, and every now and then she likes to grab a leash and hit the trails with Ella, her dog, so they can both get some exercise. And since Meredith lives pretty close to Vogel State Park in Georgia, it's only natural for her to take Ella on outings there on a pretty regular basis. Now, on New Year's Day 2008, the weather isn't too bad in Georgia, and she wants to hike. So she leaves a note in her apartment so her roommate won't worry if she comes home to an empty unit. She grabs her water bottle, tennis shoes, and Ella's leash before heading off. And sadly, Meredith does not come back home when she said she would. The roommate reaches out to the authorities to report that Meredith, her roommate, had gone on a hike and didn't come home. So the officers organized search teams to march through the woods, calling Meredith's name and looking for evidence. Meredith's water bottle is lying on the ground in the woods. It is nowhere near the trail. It's in the middle of nowhere. And that's when they noticed something else. Somebody had been trying to access her bank account since she went missing. Bank records show that on that evening, someone drove to town outside of the state park and tried to withdraw cash using Meredith's debit card. And then a short while later, someone attempted to make a withdrawal in a different town called Gainesville, Georgia. Now, the next day, this person tries again. They attempt to withdraw Meredith's money in a town called Canton. And finally, on the 3rd, the person successfully withdraws all of Meredith's cash. Now, when police pull the security cameras from those ATMs, they see who's been trying to get into her account. It is not Meredith. The police are able to get a good picture of his face, which is how they identify him as 61-year-old Gary Michael Hilton. Gary decided to become a survivalist, so he walked off into a state park in the hopes that he could hunt and forage all of the food he needed to eat. Gary had a van, which he slept and lived in, and he had his dog with him. The problem was Gary couldn't take care of all of his needs. He still had to go into town on occasion for food, warm clothes, blankets, and other necessities. Gary took to stealing cash from hikers and campers. He also attempted a homicide in his past. Gary got into a fight with his stepfather, and during the argument, he got so angry that he picked up a shotgun and fired it at his stepdad. So this is what the police know about their main suspect. So they decide to release Gary's photo to all of the local news outlets. This includes leads that come from other police departments in other states. They're like, hey, Gary is actually a person of interest in one of our open cases. That was when a retired couple named John and Irene Bryant went missing from a camping trip in the Pisgah National Forest, which is in North Carolina. After they went missing, someone withdrew their money from the bank using their ATM card. By this point, Irene's body had been found, but John hadn't, and Meredith hadn't gone missing yet. Now, on that day, which was a Sunday, a woman named Cheryl Dunlap failed to show up for church. 2 weeks later, on December 16th, her body was found in a forest near a hiking trail, and her head was missing. However, her injuries were not consistent with a wild animal attack. Instead, it was clear that somebody had murdered her and mutilated her body. She was with an older white man who had a dog and drove a green van or truck. So Gary, at this point, has been linked to 3 other murders, but he hasn't been arrested or charged yet. And on January 4th, one day, a man calls 911 while he's at a gas station. He says he spotted Gary at the same gas station filling up his van's tank. The police arrive, but now Gary has already left the station at this time, but he's only a little ways down the road, close enough for the officers to actually see him and pull him over. Problem is, he's alone. So they pull him into an interrogation immediately, and right away, he admits to killing Meredith, and he doesn't stop there. Gary goes on and on, rambling about his motives, his psychology, his history, and any other thought that pops into his head. Gary claims he murdered Meredith because he was angry at society. Gary also claims he has psychological problems, including sociopathic tendencies. Gary says that in addition to Meredith, he also killed John and Irene Bryant. Gary tied John and Irene up, took their debit and credit cards from their wallets, and then dragged them off into the woods with him. Then he told John and Irene to get into it, but Irene refused, so Gary beat her to death right then and there. And with John's help, Gary emptied his bank account and then drove back into the woods, and that's where he shot John, killing him. Now, Meredith's story began a little differently. He hiked with her for a while before he attacked her. Apparently, he enjoyed getting to know her before he murdered her. Gary pretended that he just happened to be going down the same trail Meredith was on. At one point, he even faked that he was exhausted and paused to get some rest, and Meredith waited with him to make sure he was okay. And while her guard was down, Gary drew a knife and jumped at her. She put up a hard fight and almost got away. He said that he had psychic powers and he could mentally influence people to make them feel calm and cooperative. Seriously. He also said he had decided to let her dog Ella go. In fact, he drove the black lab into town and let her go unharmed. Once he let the dog go, Gary was only focused on one thing. He drove her to town, parked outside of a bank, and asked for her PIN number, just like he had done with John. See, Meredith didn't give him her real PIN. She just said a bunch of random numbers. And of course, when Gary tried to withdraw money from her account, he wasn't able to. The code was wrong. And in the meantime, Meredith watched him from the car as he tried and failed to withdraw her money. So they drove to the next town over and tried again. And the same thing happened at the next ATM and then the next one after that. All the while, she was laying a trail for the police to follow, ensuring Gary appeared on lots of bank security cameras attempting to access her account. So he offered her a deal. If she told him the real PIN, he would take her money but let her live. And apparently Meredith believed him because she gave him her code and he withdrew all of her money. Then Gary drove back into the woods with Meredith. He wanted to punish and humiliate her for what she had done to him. Gary raped Meredith. And then when he was done, he murdered her, beat her to death. Tragically, she died just a few hours before Gary was spotted at the gas station and arrested. At this point, they realize they have an actual serial killer on their hands, but when they ask him about the other unsolved homicide, the Cheryl Dunlap one, Gary insists he had nothing to do with it. Police know better. See, when they arrested Gary, they searched his car and there was blood in it, and DNA tests show that it's Cheryl's. So clearly, Gary had killed her too. They tell Gary if he shows them where Meredith's remains are, they won't pursue the death penalty against him, and Gary accepts this deal. Her autopsy confirms the same story he told. He pleads guilty to killing Meredith and is sentenced to life in prison. So the police told the truth. They didn't pursue the death penalty in Meredith's case. But John, Irene, and Cheryl, they were killed in other states, meaning there are different courts involved, and they don't have to honor the deal Gary made in Georgia. So in April of 2011, the state of Florida puts him on trial for Cheryl's murder. And this time around, the death penalty is on the table. Gary is found guilty and sentenced to be executed. All through each trial, he's making headlines, and the reporters are sharing every update. In their broadcasts, the journalists give Gary a nickname: the National Forest Killer. Gary still says he's innocent of Cheryl's murder, and he refuses to say whether he has any other victims that the police don't know about yet. But then in the spring of 2025, a reporter with Court TV reaches out to Gary, asking for an interview, and to everyone's surprise, Gary agrees to it. And before he dies, Gary says he wants to set the record straight on exactly what he did and why. Gary finally admits he killed Cheryl. He says he liked the thought that he had the power to hurt a lot of people by killing one person. So he decided to go further with Cheryl than he had with any other victims. Once Cheryl was dead, Gary cut off her hands and her head. He also hinted that he had other victims. Gary told his interviewer, quote, "I know as well as anyone, I'm a crime expert, and I know that serial killers never, ever start killing when they're 61 years old. They don't just wake up and start killing people. It doesn't happen." It sounds like he's claiming he started much earlier when he was younger. As of this recording, Gary is still alive and on death row. It is no wonder so many women choose the bear.